Welcome to Truth Sentinel, watching over the truth in the news. Very warm welcome to everyone, whether you're listening on YouTube or on the digital networks. I hope you enjoy today's show. We're going to be talking about automated military machines, AI robots, and something called Skynet. All will be revealed shortly. And I'm going to be joined by our resident researcher from Almaty, Kazakhstan, Anthony K, and Seth Davis from Two Real News. And remember, you can leave comments in the chat box on our website at www.truthsentinel.co.uk. You can also leave voicemails there, and we can put them on the show and respond to them. So that's www.truthsentinel.co.uk. Okay, anyway, let's move on. So do we have anything to fear from the rise of machines and AI technology? Let's go and find out. So first of all, I wanted to welcome back Seth Davis from Two Real News, who joined us in a lot of episodes previously and is joining us today. And then we've got Anthony K over there in Kazakhstan. So first of all, let's say hello to Seth. Welcome back to Truth Sentinel.
Oh, thank you for having me, Scott. How are you doing?
I'm not doing too bad, thanks. Yeah, nothing that can't be sorted out anyway. And how have you been? What have you been up to in the last few months?
Oh, quite a bit. Just really concentrating on working on music there and a lot of stuff, trying to get back on the news bandwagon there, as it were, however you want to call it there. Been on a hiatus for a while from that, just trying to concentrate on work and living situation and everything like that.
Yeah, tell me about it. I know what it's like. And Anthony, how's things over there in Kazakhstan?
Things are very good over here. Yeah, settled in well. As I've said to you before, enjoying the city, enjoying the culture and the challenge of getting back into learning Russian, which is not the easiest language in the world to master, as you know.
So today's episode is about drones, Skynet, AI, and the rise of the intelligent machines, to use a kind of Terminator reference, which of course Skynet is as well. And wanted to start, Anthony, by asking, what is Skynet?
Well, there are actually several things called Skynet. As you said, the name appears in the Terminator movies, and several people have grabbed it to use it. But this particular Skynet comes from documents leaked by Edward Snowden and published on Glenn Greenwald's The Intercept website. It's essentially an NSA program which determines whether people are terrorists or not. But it does that, and I'm not making this up, it does that using an algorithm. The specific documents in question that Snowden leaked included a PowerPoint presentation, and I have to say it's kind of an ugly PowerPoint presentation. You know, these NSA guys, they really need to get someone in there to help them brush up on their presentation skills. But in this PowerPoint and in a number of other documents as well, they outlined this Skynet software app. And in a nutshell, what it does, it takes metadata from bulk phone records and it applies machine learning to these records to try and work out who's a terrorist and who isn't. Now, to make that happen, first you need to feed the software with what are called ground truths. And ground truths are facts about individuals who you already know are enemies. So one type of known enemy that the NSA has been trying to capture more of is Al-Qaeda couriers, the people who take messages from one Al-Qaeda cell to another. So you get the phone records from those people and you put those into the system, and this machine learning algorithm profiles them. So it might come up with specific travel patterns, for example, or it might analyze who you call and when you call them. Or it might conclude that, you know, known enemies tend to swap their SIM cards more often than a normal person does. And in the end, the Skynet software has come up with about 80 of these parameters, right? So then you get the mass data, say from the government of Pakistan, and you put the data of a very large number of people into Skynet, and it analyzes that to find out if anyone in the general population behaves in a similar way to the known enemies. And everybody gets a score, so to speak. So if your score is high enough, you go on a watch list. And if you go over a particular threshold, which the machine actually sets, the programmers don't set this threshold, the machine does it itself. If you get over that, then you're automatically classified terrorist. And that happens without a single human being ever having looked at your data. And in fact, it may be even worse than just watch list. Some people may end up on death lists if their match is strong enough. This is something we don't know for sure, but there's very strong evidence that people flagged by some NSA programs do end up being the targets of drone attacks. And in fact, Michael Hayden, who's the former director of both the CIA and the NSA, publicly said in April 2014 that, quote unquote, we kill people based on metadata. So it seems very likely that Skynet is being used for a similar purpose.
It doesn't really surprise me, because this is the way that people at the top of echelons tend to work, basically. Even in business, people at the top, they don't actually get involved or see things or observe things physically. They tend to rely on data. So you get people analysing pie charts, which sort of shows performance of workers underneath. And they get they make conclusions based on data. And actually what's happening on the ground is very different, I know it's kind of... I know it's just a metaphor, but, working in a call centre, for example, which I've done in the past, you get people who are presumed to be the best workers, because if you look at the data, they've answered more calls, and so the management are very happy with them, and they sort of promote them. And actually it's the opposite. They're actually answering calls without helping people. They're just going from one call to another very quickly. The people who are stopping and actually really helping people and taking their time and walking away from their desks and going to different departments, it doesn't look good on the pie chart. It looks like they're not actually helping, so they're sort of chastised. I saw this in call centers, so I think it happens in business quite a lot, and I think this is the same kind of thing,
Yeah, I think that's right, and the reason why it happens is because there are many drains on a senior manager's time, and looking at a pie chart is a lot faster than going and watching and talking to every single employee. And it's the same with this. When you've got such a lot of data to analyze, and we'll talk about the quantities in a moment, it seems that metadata seems to be a way to do this faster than you could do it manually, and so people or agencies have leapt on this, I think. But in actual fact, I would say not only is it kind of evil, quote unquote, but it's arguably very, very ineffective, like the pie charts as an indicator of actual employee performance. Analysts who have looked into these leaked documents have found, for example, that these ground truths have been established using the phone records of just 7 people. So they gave the computer the records of 7 known terrorists, along with 100,000 non-terrorists, and they said to the computer, okay, if these 7 people have different traveling habits or phone usage patterns to the others, then anyone else we find in the future whose phone habits show the same kind of differences from the normal population is also a terrorist. And look, it's been revealed that one of the highest scores Skynet has given anyone so far belongs to a guy called Ahmad Muwaffaq Zaidan, who's not a terrorist in any way, shape or form. And in fact, this guy is the bureau chief for Al Jazeera in Islamabad. So
literally is about as much of a U.S. Asset as possible. Ironic.
Pretty much, yeah. But based on his initial score, he was then closely tracked by Skynet. He was assigned a watch list number, and he was identified as a possible Al-Qaeda member because, being one of Pakistan's preeminent journalists, he has spent time with these people. He's done a number of interviews with high-ranking Al-Qaeda folks, including one he did with Bin Laden about 10 years ago. So, of course, to interview these people, he has to contact them, he has to interact with them, he has to travel to where they are, and so he is now flagged.
In a way, I think for some people, anyone who even interviews anyone, in ISIS or Al-Qaeda is a terrorist, according to some people's simplistic view of, terrorism.
Well, that's true, but I think it illustrates what you were saying before, Scott, which is that, data is not the same thing as human intelligence. And the other problem is that being an algorithm, I mean, Skynet works purely and solely on probabilities, right? So the tech that it uses is strikingly similar to the technology which makes your email spam filter work. Now, you guys have got email addresses. we know there are some non-spam messages that get flagged, right? And they end up in your spam folder. So, I mean, I've had the experience of waiting for someone to send me an email about a job or, something quite important, and then discovering days later, that it's in my spam, it's been in my spam folder all along. And I'm sure lots of listeners have had that experience. Yeah. And when that happens, it's because the message has set off a bunch of probabilistic alarm bells. Although it's obviously not the kind of message that the software is meant to block, right? Now, when that happens, that's what they call a false positive. But in the case of spam filters, I mean, the worst thing that can happen is that you miss a message, right? And in that case, false positives in the system are tolerable. But when the worst thing that can happen is that you can get killed by a drone, well, then false positives really aren't tolerable. So this presentation and the documents associated with it have been quite a revelation, because according to the NSA, and this is actually one of the boasts they make about their software in this shoddy little PowerPoint presentation, one of the big advantages, they say, is that Skynet generates very, very low rates of false positives. But if you look into what they're actually saying here, it's a really dodgy claim. What they say is you can set up the machine to keep the false positive rate low, so to keep falsely classified terrorists, keep the number of them low. Yeah? To do this, you allow the system to miss a certain percentage of people who might actually be terrorists. Let's say, for example, if you have a threshold of 60 points, so anyone who gets more than 60 points is a terrorist, right? Then you raise it to, say, 63 to try and have less false positives. There'll be a few actual terrorists in the range of 61 or 62 who will escape detection as a result. And those people are called false negatives. If you set the false negative rate at 50%, then the false positive rate, the number of people who are incorrectly classified as terrorists, that becomes 0.18%. So that's the number they like to brag about, this 0.18. And it does sound very low until you look at how much data is in the system. Like in Pakistan, Skynet is already working on a vast scale. The phone records of 55 million Pakistanis have been analyzed. And so if you take that false positive rate of
I'm sure they've all been given their consent individually, right?
Oh, I'm sure they have, absolutely. Each person has signed a waiver and, whatever, been to lunch with an NSA operative, I don't know. But if you take the number 55 million, right, and that's out of about 130 million phone users in Pakistan, so it's about half the people who own phones in Pakistan. If you take the 55 million and you apply this false positive rate of 0.18% that the NSA talks about, what you get is 99,000 people wrongly classified as terrorists, which is pretty staggering if you think about that. By the way, some people are saying that the NSA's numbers are rubbish anyway, and the whole basis of it is mathematically unsound, and so the false positive rate is going to be a lot higher. But let's accept their number for the time being, just for the sake of argument, because even if you do, you're still talking about frightening numbers.
Just based on the surface population of the Earth, we're talking, let's say, just about 7 billion people. If you take 0.18% of that, you're still talking a huge amount of people falsely accused of being terrorists. Huge, in the hundreds of millions.
Absolutely, absolutely. You'd be talking populations of whole countries.
If you've got nothing to hide, you'll be fine, right? Sorry, I'm just in a sarcastic mood today.
Yeah, I can tell. Thailand is obviously bringing out the sarcasm in you.
I think it's the mosquitoes, actually. I've been bitten by hundreds of mosquitoes. Kind of reminds me of the previous program we did on drones. And we were talking about the little miniature mosquito drones they possibly are developing.
Yes, the nano drones, I think they're called. Yeah. But you'll be thrilled to know, Scott, that GHCQ in the UK, kind of, I guess you could call them the UK's version of the National Security Agency. That's to an extent. Yeah. They use a similar system, and it's been even more heavily criticised because there's kind of two parts to their software. There's the main program, and then there's a kind of analyzing program that sits over the top of it to tell you how accurate it is, and this sitting over the top program vastly overestimates the accuracy of whatever algorithm it's using. And that means that intelligence agencies in the UK can go to politicians and boast about their impressive accuracy figures when actually they're not accurate at all. It's just a problem in the software. So even more than a US watch list, you really don't want to be on a British watch list. I mean, look, to be honest though, I mean, the danger to people like, the three of us and our listeners is not that huge at the moment. We are talking about countries like Pakistan, where it is now really dangerous. But in the future, even in our own countries, who knows? Because there's always the possibility that agencies will start using this tech to track people domestically.
Oh, I'm sure they will.
Absolutely. I mean, you let them dehumanize people halfway across the world and kill them wholesale. What the hell do you think is going to happen to you eventually? I mean, if one of our rights are violated of anybody around the world by a government, don't think for a moment they don't hold you or anybody else that's not in their immediate best interest to keep alive as a possible threat or somebody that they'd be willing to do the exact same thing to.
Exactly. And the way this works too is that once you sort of hit a certain score and you're in a subset of people with high kind of terroristiness, then other things you do will also be flagged. So, for example, if you turn off your mobile, that gets flagged as an attempt to evade mass surveillance, right? If you stay overnight with friends, that raises a flag because it could be a cell. If you move abroad, that's a big flag, right?
Oh my goodness, so, I think I'm on the death list already.
I think we all are. But you could have this sort of spiraling effect, and where the more your personal likelihood is upgraded, then the more suspicious your kind of ordinary everyday movements look to the software, which is pretty frightening. And in the meantime, I mean, we as I said, we don't know if this Skynet has been one of the things which has determined who gets killed by the drones, but we do know that Obama's drones have killed at least 4,000 people, and it seems that many of them now may have been singled out for death on the basis of metadata and mathematics, which means now algorithms and metadata can quite literally kill you.
Anthony, as you said there, the risk of false positives on this could mean literally you being blown up by a drone. However, the part we don't acknowledge is that sometimes dozens of people get blown up in a single drone strike that have not one thing to do with even the people that have been accused of being terrorists.
Yes, that is absolutely true. This is part of the, I think there's been a huge drive in the last quarter century or so, and I suspect it dates back to the first Gulf War, a huge drive to convince people that technology is the way to reduce civilian casualties in war. And in fact, if you look at it, starting with the smart bombs, you remember all the excitement about the smart bombs on CNN and during the first Gulf War. Starting there, I think, what has in fact happened is precisely the opposite. As we've relied less on human intelligence to target enemy combatants, I hate that phrase, but as we've relied less and less on human intelligence and more on technology and machines, the civilian casualty rate has just gone through the roof. Even as the politicians tell us that the precise opposite thing is happening.
I know some drone operators have started to come out and talk about some of the injustices they've seen. People like Brandon Bryant from the Project Red Hand organization, I'm trying to get some of these sort of whistleblower drone operators to come on the show at some point. It'd be great to chat to them, because a lot of them are coming out and saying they've witnessed innocents being killed, children as well, and it would be good to have a chat with them and expose some of what's going on.
Can you tell me a bit about Brandon? What was his name? Brandon Bryant?
Brandon Bryant. So he joined the Air Force in 2005, and he was training for the drone program, and he got him actually involved in the drone program. And I think there's a documentary about him. He spoke to Robert Greenwald in a documentary called Unmanned, and he's now a whistleblower, basically talking about events where he was told to take out terrorists, and then he saw small figures run across at the moment just before the strike and realised they were children. Then he got out of the program, and he's now exposing some of the things that are going on along with another team of a few other people as well.
Okay. I'd heard the name, and I didn't know in what connection.
You may have seen him, because he's the main guy that seems to appear on TV regarding whistleblowing about drones. He seems to be the main spokesman.
Okay.
It seems like the US, the UK, and other Western powers, they want to sort of compete with China and Russia, who are apparently investing heavily in this kind of software and artificial intelligence and robots, and sort of getting more taking humans out of the equation again. But I actually thought, well, in some ways this could be a good idea. How about taking humans out of the equation totally and having robot wars to sort of settle international disputes?
Or indeed, we could just get mature enough to be able to avoid major conflicts such as this wholesale. But
Yeah,
of course,
let's be realistic, Seth. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, it makes more sense to just throw robots at each other because that's realistic either.
Why not?
Like
Yeah,
literally spend billions of dollars in bankrupt countries on robots to fight each other, which eventually, once the robots are done fighting the other robots of the other country, what, do you just take it over, or do those robots then go on to genocide the entire unequipped population of that country? I mean, where does it stop? I mean, any of it. And I'm sure people will literally use the whole idea of putting out, as this next article that I really wanted to bring up is going to cover there, rolling out whole things of robot armies, of robotically, artificially intelligent Navy ships or planes or anything like that. Just in the same way that they have drone programs, they could have tanks that are completely artificially intelligent. And I think that's really the direction they're going to go, and they're going to promote that as, well, it's causes less casualties. I believe it's just sickening. But as you were mentioning about Russia and China, we have this article here out of the Washington Post. This is the exotic new weapons the Pentagon wants to deter Russia and China. And I think it's really ironic because they say that these are secrets. However, all of these weapons that they're talking about are all things that I have covered, that you have covered, Scott, that Pete has covered on his show. That, I mean, so many people have talked about in the quote-unquote conspiracy theory side of things for literally about a decade now. And now all of a sudden, because they come out with it and they have like a White House press secretaries or something confirm it, now it's fact. I mean, it wasn't Veritas before. But just before I get into this, here's a bit of Orwellian news for you. Looking at the fact that this should be, in my opinion, one of the biggest stories on Washington Post. But when I look at the side column here that says the most read, the top 5 are all about whom. Just guess. I'll give you and Anthony one guess each. Just whom are all these top 5 articles about on the Washington Post?
You mean Kim Kardashian?
No, Donald Trump, actually. Ah, damn it. Sorry there, Anthony. Kind of stole your answer from you.
and that was going to be my guess too. Damn it!
Damn it! Oh, I knew you were going to get it, man. You have it there. Like, who the hell do you think the media has been just like frothing at the mouth over for the longest time to keep everybody distracted from things that actually matter? I mean, we've got Trump is GOP's Frankenstein monster. Max Lucado, Trump doesn't pass the decency test. How to cool down Donald Trump. The moment of truth. We must stop Trump. And Chris Christie's despicable endorsement of Trump. As though any of that crap matters.
Where's Kim Kardashian then? Is she not on number 6?
Oh, no. I mean, Donald Trump, that's way more important. To hold him up as a golden god, or it's more important to bash him as the evil man on the TV there, and everybody just spends all their time worried about that crap in the 2 minutes of hate, George Orwell style, rather than paying attention to the things that actually matter.
I don't want to feed into that too much, but I think it's quite interesting that he does get so much of that kind of hysterically negative coverage in the so-called respectable media. This kind of how to stop Trump kind of stuff. And I wonder, is there a bit of reverse psychology going on here? Is it going to come to the point where Trump is shut down, or is this kind of oh my God, he's a monster thing meant to play to the ordinary folk as, look at the mainstream media, the liberal media with their crazy ideas, we don't believe them, they're always bashing Trump, therefore I will vote for Trump. Do you think there might be a bit of that?
I'm not so sure, because that sounds too clever to me. For me, I think I don't think the media are that clever, and I'm not sure the people feeding the media are that clever either.
Mm-hmm. Well, hate to cut that off there or anything, not give Trump any more limelight than he's already got there. But continuing on with this article, to start it, we've got little noticed amid the daily news bulletins about the Islamic State in Syria, the Pentagon has begun a push for exotic new weapons, quote unquote, that can deter Russia and China. Pentagon officials have started openly talking about using the latest tools of artificial intelligence and machine learning to create robot weapons, quote, human-machine teams, whatever that means, and enhanced superpowered soldiers. It may sound much like science fiction, but officials say they have concluded that such high-tech systems are the best way for rapid improvements by Russian and Chinese militaries, or to combat rapid improvements by Russian and Chinese militaries. It just goes on to have things such as videos here that you can watch if you go to WashingtonPost.com of watch unmanned Navy vessels overwhelm a target and all this type of stuff that DARPA and all these different groups are putting out in an attempt to create autonomous Navy vessels or autonomous planes that are far larger than any drone we've got. So, yeah.
Apparently, the military have realised that human-machine collaboration could be the way to go because there were studies done showing that when playing strategy games such as chess, if you got amateur chess players working along with computers, they were far more effective against a team of chess masters than say a machine against a chess master or another human against a chess master. It was the combination that was the most effective. So they've started to integrate that into the military.
I could see it. I could see it.
But I still think with also with the increase in creating exoskeletons and wearable electronics and with heads-up displays, you're going to get humans that are going to become almost morphed into computers and machines and
cyborgs or cybernetics.
I don't understand what's the necessity of spilling human blood to settle international disputes. Why not the machines? I was only half joking when I said about the robot wars. Why not? What is the factor of the human blood being spilled that is so essential to settle international disputes?
Well, I think that I think there are several dangerous things about it, and I can't personally imagine a time when one country sends its robot army out to face the robot army of another country. The reason why I can't see that is because, if you go back to, let's say, the 18th century, that's essentially what happened. Like these huge battles like Waterloo and so on, it was like the soldiers went out of the town and found a battlefield and they fought there and the winning army, got to take over the country of the other army, right? But that hasn't happened for a long time. I mean, World War I really sealed the deal on that. Because it started this, or it didn't start, but it cemented this idea of total war. So you're not like two armies on a field anymore. You're a whole society at war. If you look at the most recent kind of, I suppose, biggest quagmire in the world at the moment, which is Syria. I mean, it's been largely house to house, block to block fighting, and it's been bombing areas where civilians live, and that's the way of things. And very unfortunately, that's been the way of things. You've got to destroy infrastructure. You've got to destroy manufacturing. You've got to destroy things like this in order to take out an opponent country. And you can't do that without civilian casualties. You can't do that without human casualties. So the idea that the robots, one robot army will beat another, and the beaten army's country will go, oh, okay, fair enough, you win. I just don't see it.
Well, I can see it. I think in the cases of, say, poorer countries engaging in war with richer countries that have all the technology, they can send, especially when it comes to a sort of a land battle, a battle zone. They can send in all their technology and robots and robot tanks and even robot, fighting machines to kill all the humans, and then the soldiers march in afterwards and clean up the mess, basically. So I can see that happening. In the same
exactly.
way
and what makes that any different, really, than what's going on now? I mean, the country that has the most money and that can produce the most weapons of war, they're simply dropping them indiscriminately around the rest of the world merely to show that they're the most amoral.
Yeah, it's happening already. It happened in the Iraq War. You had the casualties on the Iraqi side, which I still don't think is very clear to anyone. Like, I've heard figures of 500,000. I have no idea how many Iraqis were killed.
About the last number I had that was fairly accurate was I did it in every major since 9/11, every major U.S. conflict, and I transferred it into about how many people died in 9/11 there. And that, given with the numbers that they have, dividing it and then making how many like 9/11s that was the equivalency of. The United States has inflicted about 500, almost 500 9/11s on Iraq.
Yeah, yeah.
So truly, this whole terror state, this whole idea of algorithms to predict terrorism and to put you on a list, all of this truly really coming from post 9/11 America and post 7/7 England it's ridiculous. It's the height of insanity.
I do have to agree. Yeah.
I just wanted to also mention, a lot of people said the Jade Helm exercise was about sort of testing this kind of strategy software as well.
Program Jade, NSA's Jade program specifically. I believe Jason and I covered that on our show, and I think that we might have even had you on to talk about similar stuff at one point. But I know that a lot of this type of stuff, everybody was freaking out about Jade Helm, but you notice how that's completely disappeared from the news, much in the same way something that is important, such as Fukushima, completely disappears from the news. And I mean, it might as well be a ghost town for all anybody gives a damn. But in the case of Jade Helm there, or the Jade program, that was doing exactly what Anthony was just describing as Skynet. That is exactly the same program. However, instead of just doing that, of just distinguishing threats and everything, it also combines that with a real-time military algorithm of essentially like a troop dispersal program, an algorithm of where to locate and relocate troops in live time for the most effective military dominance of an area.
Yeah. You know what else I think is going to happen if we talk about the automation of military operations is that I'm worried that it's going to be privatized. I think we started to see this in Iraq. Well, it wasn't the beginning, but again, it's one of those things. It really became a large factor in Iraq. You know, the number of soldiers in Iraq versus the number of contractors. And the various functions that used to be military functions being farmed out to the corporate world. And I think that brings with it a whole other raft of problems. But in terms of artificial intelligence, I think that the term has not been used all that much lately. It almost seems that it hasn't been a great concern of many people.
I was going to say, even about the last 2 years, they've really kind of dropped that out of the news on a lot of stuff, whereas before we'd always hear about the latest thing of the Turing test being challenged and allegedly broken by different kinds of so-called AIs that they've created that aren't true artificial intelligence, but are a shadow of it, essentially.
Yeah, exactly, and it has disappeared from sight in the sort of pop culture sense, But over the same period, or at least in the last sort of 6 or 7 years, the private investment in artificial intelligence has been going through the roof. The average increase between 2009 and 2014 was a 62% increase in investment by corporations in artificial intelligence per year, and it's expected to continue. So we're talking about companies like Facebook, Google, Yahoo, Intel, Dropbox, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Twitter, all of these companies have purchased AI companies, and a lot of those guys that I just mentioned are social network companies, right? But and their AI is going to be used for purposes that are specific to social networks.
I'm sure their information won't feed into Skynet or anything similar to that. I'm sure, right?
Yeah, right. Absolutely not. But then you look at Google, who's launched this Lunar X project in the last 10 years, and I suspect that 10 years down the track, corporations like Google could be major contractors to the U.S. military, and the investment that they've made in artificial intelligence could become the kind of the weaponry of the future. I really do.
Yeah, to back you up on that, Google owns Boston Dynamics, which is one of the main robotics contractors for DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency of the U.S. government.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. See, those kinds of things really disturb me, because once you have a war that's essentially being fought by Google, then you have an entirely new set of moral dilemmas that we're not ready to deal with.
How long do you think it will be before automated machines and software making decisions will be in control of the nuclear arsenals?
I'd say in many ways they already are, Scott. I mean, so many of these facilities are completely and totally controlled by computer programs that a good enough hacker can get through. So I wouldn't necessarily consider it impossible for some sort of artificial intelligence to do that very thing. I mean, so much of what keeps them from pushing AI further is the capabilities it will have eventually to turn on them. And that's really one of the scariest things that many like hubris-filled people will try and ignore, but I really think is going to be more of an issue in the future.
Thank you very much for that comforting thought, Scott.
I also wanted to. I was just looking at the Project Red Hand organization, the drone whistleblowers, and it says on here they've got in quotes. Patriotism is often the cry extolled when morally questionable acts are advocated by those in power. When these cries of patriotism drown our own logically based intentions, is usually an American soldier is ordered to carry out some ill-conceived mission. And that's the problem, I think, is just going back to patriotism, and sort of links in a way, because I think at some point, although this software may be in control, someone's still going to have to press the start button, and I think it'll happen because people will think it's a good idea to kill lots of other people because of patriotism. That's why I've said it before. I just think it's one of the most dangerous phenomenons when it comes to nationalities.
You've got it perfectly there, Scott. I mean, think about for a second here what we were just talking about. Of patriotism is going to be one of the major drivers behind pushing government and corporations to become a one single amalgamous thing, that until eventually you'll have a corporate entity that pretty much is the United States government. I mean, in many ways, it already is an oligopoly of corporations that run this government and have been promoted to run this government through nationalism, through patriotism type of a thing there, of xenophobia and foreign expansion. I mean, imperialism is the name of the game at the end of the day. And in order to create an imperial guard there, the United States government has to contract out to many of these different companies. And many of these different companies and corporations pretty much rule the government now. I mean, at one point they didn't. They were still definitely feeding off the teat of the American taxpayer there. But now, I mean, they really have become the driving force of the United States government, with trillions of dollars a year spent on many of these programs for these military contracts and other domestic contracting agencies. A great example of this is DARPA. I mean, we have this year a $50 million reusable space plane. Just one tops DARPA's budget request again for the DoD.
Yeah, it's always amazing to look at the amount of money that's spent on the military and what it could be spent on. It's kind of crazy, really. It's exasperating, makes you despair.
Well, think about the amount of money spent on the military budget versus, I mean, just for a second here, I hate to get off topic, but think of how much many of these people bitch about how welfare programs or social programs are what is destroying this country and bankrupting it, or any other country around the world. Just think for a moment how much more money they spend on military in all these countries, and all of their new weapons every single year, their more bombs, more tanks, more helicopters, more planes, all this stuff. How much money all of that is, and how much that entails, versus how much money they actually spend on their populace.
It's very true. If you look at if you look in the UK, you get papers like the Daily Mail who'll print an article about someone who's sponged £200 from the government, and it's everyone is supposed to look down on them, and nobody really mentions the millions and billions that are spent on the military. It's
trillions, Scott,
yeah,
in this country, yeah. Trillions a year, yeah.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right, Scott. And in Australia, there's a similar kind of a phenomenon. There's these current affairs programs who, they regularly go after like crooked plumbers and people like that who, he charged an extra $60 for a part that he didn't provide, Oh my God, these people are ruining our society.
Seriously, him and Hitler have a special place waiting for him in hell, right?
Absolutely. And in the meantime, the defense thing. I mean, but it surprises me too that these days it's so blatant. I remember quite some time ago, these statistics started to come out as about how much the US spent on its military versus the rest of the world. So you put the US in you put the US in one column and rest of the world and the other, and you go, whoa, look at that. That was kind of That was somewhat scandalous when that information first started to become available. But now it doesn't seem scandalous. I most recently noticed it when I was listening to Obama's State of the Union speech in January, and he said he kind of commented that there's this hand wringing in America about the military and is the military strong enough and so on, and he said we spend more on our military than the next 8 nations put together. Our military is the best funded military in the world, period, right? And he openly said that to a thunderous round of applause.
Nobody questioned that at all.
This is what I'm talking about, patriotism. This is where, you get a populace that think, that want to be protected and want to be powerful. And patriotism is the thing that helps fuel that. You can get the consent and agreement of the population to kill hundreds of thousands of people if they think it's, to protect them. But most of the time it's not to protect them, is it?
Yeah, exactly, and you're right, Seth, because when he said that, the reaction was based on that. Yay, we're safe. We're number one. America is on the right track, etc. But in that moment, nobody connects it to anything else that perhaps they should be spending more money on, and rather than
literally the infrastructure here in the United States is falling the hell apart. Literally crumbling around us, and we don't have enough money for welfare. We don't have enough money for any of this, but we have trillions of dollars to spend every single year maintaining an empire of over 1,000 military bases in over 100 nations worldwide.
Yeah, I know.
How the hell is that right?
The infrastructure thing is becoming quite urgent, and I think we were going to mention this on another episode of Truth Sentinel. But there was a report last year in USA Today about the survey that was done last year by the American Road and Transportation Builders Association. They found 61,000 structurally unsound bridges across America. There's 600,000 bridges in America. 10% of them are desperately structurally unsound. And it's got to the point where there's a website called Transportation for America, right, where you can go onto the website. I'm not making this up. You go onto the website and there's a little software thingy where you write in the details of your route from home to work, and the website comes back at you and tells you whether or not you drive across any unsafe bridges on your way to work in America. It blows my mind.
Yeah. And we're bringing freedom and democracy to the rest of the world, right?
This is why, again, we did an episode on Vietnam and we talked about the military and that, and I hate to come across as anti-military because I'm not. I respect anyone who, or at least some people who go off, because some people think they're protecting their nation. I probably disagree with them with in the case of most wars, but I just think, especially watching Fox News, you get a lot of that kind of, thank you for your service kind of thing. I sort of get it in a way, but I just think it's dangerous. I saw people sort of saying they're going to be proud to send their sons and daughters off to war in the future.
Which makes me sick.
Yeah, it's just like, think about what you're saying. You want your son or daughter to go off to potentially die, and probably
or to potentially
in a
kill
war,
people.
Yeah, and to kill other people too in a war that will be sold as something, to defend your country, but probably isn't. This is the thing I have, that it's not that I hate the military or anything. It's just, I don't want people to die unnecessarily, and I think people are being duped, and I think a lot of people think that people are being duped. But patriotism can sometimes override that and make people sort of go all a bit fuzzy and think that it's all for the glory of the nation and to protect our homeland, when it's really not. I think people are being lied to.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at just regardless of all the drones, regardless of the AI stuff, regardless of robotics, regardless of the new technology of new smart bombs and even more destructive weapons, like I believe we've covered on your show before, the Rod of God weapon, which is like a titanium rod that they drop from space planes in high orbit around the Earth that essentially re-enter the atmosphere and create a G-force bomb. Regardless of this type of stuff, what have you or I, as citizens of the United Kingdom or the United States, respectively, or Anthony is a former Australian there, like what have you gained from any wars of imperialism around the rest of the world? What has the average citizen gained of any of this? Where is our country safer than it was before? Where are there more jobs than there were before? Any of these justifications for war that they throw out at us, where is it?
No, exactly.
Yeah, I think I mean, I think historically there have been countries that have benefited from wars. I'm sad and almost ashamed to say, but certainly yeah, you have to ask how much of that does filter down to the average citizen, and Northrop
Grumman or Lockheed Martin or somebody like that makes a lot of money, but what about you or me?
Yeah, exactly. I think that the tendency is more and more that you get one class of people going off to fight the war in order to benefit a much smaller class of people who are already doing much better than the soldiers and the people who actually have to risk their lives in the first place. So a very small group of people at the kind of top of the economic spectrum benefits from the sacrifice of a much larger group of people down towards the bottom of the economic spectrum. That seems to be the thing. I think that in many ways war has become modern day warfare has become a means by which to redistribute the wealth of a nation from the taxpayer to corporations, and that sounds so like Occupy Wall Street or whatever, but I really think that's how it plays out nowadays.
Indeed, and I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap up in a second, but just to carry on my rant about patriotism, would it be so bad if we did have these two teams of robots to settle international disputes, one blue, one red, and then that can sort of buy into the team mentality that we've often talked about in the past. People can cheer on their robots, so you can really fuel, you can get rid of that unspent patriotism, cheering on your robot team that's going to hopefully defeat the enemy. And
the reason why when I laughed when you brought this up, Scott, I'm sorry, I wasn't laughing at you. In the 90s, there was a series on UK TV called Robot Wars. Do you remember Robot Wars?
It's coming back, Anthony.
It is coming back.
Yeah, here it was BattleBots.
BattleBot, yeah. So can't we just, in fact, as soon as it's televised already, can't we just expand and instead of investing trillions of dollars and billions and trillions of pounds in wars, couldn't we just sort of cut it down to 50 million and just have a massive, really good televised robot wars program?
I think, though, that the association that you'll have to create to administer those robot wars is going to make even FIFA look morally upright by comparison.
Well, you think they're going to be corrupt?
Yeah, don't you think so?
No way.
But who cares? Who cares?
It's not like corruption is like a human trait, pretty much. No way.
But who cares? Who cares if they're corrupt and they make money? They're going to do that anyway. But nobody has to die, just the robots.
Well,
but then eventually, Scott, who's to say if the AI comes to be a thing there, that they wouldn't get mad about you doing that, that they'd look at you using their robot brothers and sisters much in the same way as people here in the United States during slavery actually treated African American people. So, I mean, really, what is it any different there of having beings that, especially when we're talking about artificial intelligence here, becoming more of a thing and actually robots having feelings or understanding or sentience there or anything like that? I wonder how they'd feel about something such as that. And I think many of our discussions such as we have here where robots are quote unquote dehumanized will actually be scrutinized later by algorithms that go back and look at all this type of stuff and consider whether or not to actually wipe humanity out. I think it's a lot more likely than most of us are willing to admit, man.
We're back to the Terminator scenario.
So I think you're absolutely right, and I think Seth has a really good point in saying that corruption is part of the human character, and I don't think that we will see anything as simplistic as just two robots on a battlefield. I think what we're going to see, if you look at the development of AI, it's kind of morphed into this so-called machine learning, and machine learning does have a dark side. One aspect of that is what they call adversarial machine learning. So for the past few decades, researchers have been trying to work out how to make this field a reality. And what it is when machines learn to foil other machines. So again, like if you take spam filters as the example, because they are a good example of machine learning algorithms. They work by analyzing data that come in to your email inbox, yeah, and learning from every new spam message about how to better approximate what they know is wrong to new information, right? So they go, that message looks wrong. I'm going to throw it in the spam folder. And that's how they learn, in inverted commas. But there have been researchers analyzing how to fool these spam filters, and they've done really well. They've come up with two possibilities of doing it. One is called evasion, which is where you bypass the software, and one is called poisoning, where you poison the mind of the software into thinking that wrong is right and vice versa. Now, when we get to the point, if we ever do, of machine warfare, we can't discount this. This is still going to happen. Just as in the Cold War, you had this kind of whole subculture of, it took place in this context of what is right and what is wrong, and kind of poisoning the mind of this person to come over to the other side and all the rest of it. I think the same kind of stuff is going to play out with machines as they take a larger role in warfare. So I don't think we're going to see it, cleanly separating war off from the human realm so that we can all, live in peace and enjoy our cappuccinos. I just don't see it.
Sadly, we've run out of time, but I just wanted to go to Seth to see if he had any last words on this matter.
Not particularly. I just encourage any of the audience out there to go research, look into a lot of their own information, try and find what they can, and draw their own conclusions and opinions on this subject. But really, I think it's something that is a lot more important than many of the distractions that they try and throw in front of us. And the future is artificial intelligence. The future is cybernetics. The future is robotics, nanotechnology, transhumanism, all this sort of stuff that we really can't escape from. We have to just acknowledge it for what it is, and whether or not you think it's a good thing or not, that's completely up to you. But it is happening right now. So ball's in your court.
It is happening, and also right now there's a battle zone going on myself at the moment amongst quite a few mosquitoes, and blood has been spilled. Unfortunately, it's my own. So I'm going to end here because I need to get out of this particular zone and seek refuge.
All right. Well, look, good luck dealing with the post-traumatic stress disorder there, Scott.
Thanks.
Absolutely. You have a wonderful night, Scott. Thank you for having me on your show. Thank Anthony for having me on the show there as well. It was wonderful to talk to you guys. And anytime I can join you again in the future, just let me know.
Yeah, thanks, Seth. It's good to chat to you again.
Yeah, it's great to have you back, Seth. We've missed you.
Oh, same here. I've missed being on the show. I've missed doing a lot of the news stuff there. It's just been kind of a rough last couple months there.
Yeah, fair enough. Thanks everyone then, and we'll speak again soon.
Okay, good night.
So thanks for listening today. Remember, you can leave the voicemails on www.truthsentinel.co.uk. Also leave links in the chat box there. And check out our past episodes. We've got lots of other episodes, about 50 now, I think, on YouTube. So find us at Truth Sentinel with Scott. If you type that into YouTube, you should find us. There's 2 channels, actually. If you subscribe to us, then you'll never miss an episode. But also listen to us on the digital networks, which you can find at the bottom of the website, www.truthsentinel.co.uk. Remember also that you can buy T-shirts on there at www.trutht-shirts.com. Use the code TRUTH1 to get your special Truth Sentinel discount of 10%, and we get a small donation. Have a good week, and please join us again for our next episode. Thank you. Goodbye.